The streetlights still hummed as she slipped through the front door, dawn softening the edges of the night, the sky a pale promise of a new day. Her hair was loose, mascara traced faint rivers down her cheeks, and she smelled like someone else's cologne. For a moment she stood in the hall, key cold in her hand, like she was bracing herself for what would come next. I had been awake for hours, though I pretended to sleep. I'd listened to the soft click of the lock, the gentle creak of the floor, the muffled sigh she gave as she hung the keys. I could have confronted her then, dragged her to the light and made her tell me everything while the sky turned from black to bruised blue. But the truth is, I had already said enough for both of us. I'd written a letter the night before, folded it twice, and slipped it beneath the bowl where she kept her keys. It had been the hardest thing I'd ever done. Choosing to speak my final truth on paper rather than with a broken voice. She moved through the kitchen as if in a dream, and that's when she saw it. The envelope with my handwriting, neat and deliberate. For a second curiosity softened her features, then shame and something like fear washed over her face. She picked it up, fingers trembling. I watched from the bedroom doorway, watching her as if I were witnessing the end of a film I'd once starred in. She opened the letter with the same carefulness she used opening old presents, unaware that these words had been written for a moment like this. Cold, inevitable, unavoidable. My letter began as letters do. With a name, with the small domestic rhythms only two people who'd shared a life together could afford. Anna, it said. Simple. Intimate. The first line carried a memory of our first apartment. The cheap curtains we'd chosen together. The way she'd laughed when the rain leaked through the roof. I wrote of the ordinary moments because they mattered. The ones that painted the life we made. I wrote of the mornings we shared coffee, and the nights we whispered plans under thin blankets. I wrote of the way her hand fit mine like a sentence finished. But then the letter changed. It didn't explode into accusation. It didn't rattle with anger. Instead it unfurled the quiet truth I could not say aloud. The gradual slipping, the small betrayals that had become a canyon between us. I didn't list the nights she'd lied. I described how the house felt when she was away. How the light in the living room dimmed. How the bed remembered me alone. I wrote about the hollow in my chest that no apology, no late-night whisper, could fill. She read slowly, eyes moving over each line as if trying to locate where the love she once knew had gone. I watched the colors change in her face, pink to pale to the gray that follows something breaking. Her lips mouthed some of the words. Her shoulders hunched as if bracing for a blow. When she reached the paragraph that began, I stayed because I believed in us. A single sob escaped her, small and helpless. I had written about the night I found the messages, not to shame, but because truth deserved a witness. I wrote how I'd stared at the screen, how every casual, "I miss you" felt like a stone thrown through our window. I told her how I had imagined conversations where we could fight and cry and perhaps rebuild. But mostly I wrote about choice, about how I had chosen, for years, to be present while she drifted. And then, finally, I wrote the thing I could not bear to speak. That I had stopped hoping she'd return to me. By the time she reached the last page, the sky was thinning into a fragile morning. She folded the letter back into its envelope and pressed it to her chest like a prayer. Her eyes found me across the room, wide, wet, pleading, and for the first time in months, she seemed very young, stunned by the consequences of her own decisions. She tried to speak. "Please," she began, voice raw, the kind of voice that asks for things you know you've lost the right to ask for. I didn't mean. I held up a hand. I was tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. My grief was not the loud, consuming kind. It was quieter, colder, the steady erosion of something lived in. "Don't," I said. My voice did not rise. It did not break. It simply set down the weight between us. "Read it." She clutched the envelope like an accusation and a plea all at once. She read the final lines aloud, as if the letter demanded a witness for its last confession. "I have loved you. I loved you enough to try. But love is not a room you can leave and return to at will. You left. I am choosing to leave now too. Not from anger, but from the slow realization that what is gone cannot be rebuilt with apologies alone. This is my final act of love. To let you go and to give myself a chance to breathe." As the words hung in the air, she crumpled into the nearest chair, the first real crumple I'd seen from her in months. She whispered my name like a benediction, then like a curse. Please, she begged again, smaller. Please don't go. I moved toward the door not because I had nowhere left to stay, but because staying felt like complicity in a fiction neither of us could live. I bent to pick up my small overnight bag. No fanfare, no slammed doors, only the quiet efficiency of someone who has learned to carry his dignity in a few shirts and a resolve that won't be swayed by pleas. At the threshold, I paused. She looked up at me, eyes swollen, mascara gone in streaks, hair in disarray, and for a terrible, tender moment, I still saw the woman I'd married. My hand found the envelope on the counter and dropped it into her lap like a stone. Then I walked out. Outside, dawn had fully arrived, chasing away shadows. The air was sharp and clean in my lungs. I breathed, truly breathed, for the first time in months. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The letter would be read again. She would stay or she would leave or she would crumble or rise. But those were her choices now. Behind me, the house exhaled. A life closing slowly, not with a bang, but with the folded edges of a letter and the soft sound of one man stepping away from the life he once thought permanent.